at this meeting and at the next meeting. And that will be the draft targeted wastewater management plan for Great Pond Watershed. The process, this is by way of history here. Back in 2019, the town selectmen submitted and the state adopted a watershed management plan for the town as a whole to proceed with actually doing any kind of a sewer project in Great Pond. We were obliged by the state to do a targeted watershed management plan for Great Pond, and that's what this is. We'll devote today to the presentation of it, and the next week, the members will have a chance to offer additions or corrections or suggestions for the whole committee to consider at its next meeting. After that, we'll end up with our final version and send it to the Board of Selectmen, where they will have the opportunity, as well as the public, to comment on that at that point. The idea will be to submit a final version to the state, draft to the state in July, so that they can make their comments and send it back to us, and the town can then respond to their comments as well as anybody else's comments, in the hopes of being able to submit a final version before the end of the year, for approval before the end of the year by the state. So there's a lot of bureaucratic work to go through here, and we have Amy and Anastasia to make the presentation today.
Anastasia is going to make the presentation today. Anastasia with GHD. Okay. I just wanted to say, to start off, I appreciate the switch to Zoom, and I apologize for the last minute switch. I was one of the problem COVID people. So I'm sorry to cause the switch, but it allowed me to attend remotely.
You weren't the only one. There were two committee members that had the same difficulty, so it made some sense.
Good. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry 2 committee members had COVID as well. There has been a great deal of work done over the last year, primarily, as you all are aware, related to alternative discharge sites. And that's, as you know, that's the hardest part about about wastewater planning, is citing the discharge, because we already have our wastewater treatment plant site. A lot of this, the document itself is intended to summarize all the work that's been done over the past year and a half since the notice of project change was issued, and also to identify the recommended plan moving forward. So we last presented to the Water Quality Management Committee at the end of 2021. And there haven't been any significant changes since then. It's really just been a matter of putting together the entire history and argument into a document, and putting it together in a form we can get it to the state. So some of this, a large part of this, should seem familiar. There should be no new news in here, but it's a matter of how we present this plan to the state. So I'll hush up and let Anastasia present the document.
Great, thank you very much, Amy. So just as a little bit of an introduction, this document is building on the last major planning document that was submitted through the NEPA process in 2019, which was the notice of project change. It was a document that provided an update on the town's progress towards TMDL compliance for West Falmouth Harbor and Little Pond, and also provided conceptual plans of how the TMDLs were going to be met for the other South Coast estuary. So this document takes that compliance plan for Great Pond and fleshes it out into a targeted watershed management plan. In accordance with the MEPA certificate for the notice of project change, Our final document is due in December of 2022, so at the end of this year. And the overall goal of the project is to define a compliance plan for the Great Pond Watershed. And as Amy noted, one of the major evaluations that we're looking at is what is the appropriate effluent discharge site for Great Pond flow, also considering that there will be additional flow as planning continues for the other South Coast estuaries, and to consider that as part of the evaluation. So to put some dates to the schedule that Eric outlined, an initial draft of this document was prepared in early April, and it's been reviewed by the working group from this committee. The revisions were incorporated, and that is the draft that was sent out to you last week. There'll be a series of meetings this month to review that. As I go along, if you've had a chance to review the initial draft, or if you have questions as we present the data, please feel free to ask your questions as we go along, and we can address them as part of the presentation. Once this committee has completed its review, again, the revisions that have been voted will be incorporated into the next draft, and that will be submitted to the select board in June for their review, and it's anticipated for their vote. Once we've gone through that process, we're anticipating submitting the draft TWMP to NEPA and DEP in July of 2022. They'll undergo a review, and then we'll incorporate those changes for the final in December of 2022. The document itself is made of 9 major chapters. The introduction is really self-explanatory, and I'm not going to spend any time on it today. But for the other major chapters, we wanted to present a summary of what's in those chapters and major highlights, and then also to offer the opportunity for initial questions. So chapter 2 focuses on the planning basis and has 2 major components. The first is that it outlines our compliance approach for both a preferred and a contingency alternative. So the preferred alternative, which is shown in the left-hand column, focuses on optimizing the non-traditional nitrogen management technologies that this committee has been focusing on piloting. So it includes nitrogen load reductions for fertilizer bylaw, for stormwater best management practices, the shellfish program, both in uptake and denitrification, and the permeable reactive barrier at Shorewood Drive, as well as the traditional approaches. So the sewer extension in Little Pond sewer area that's in Great Pond and is existing, as well as the proposed sewer extensions in the T-Ticket-Acapasket sewer area within Great Pond. Some of these are presented as ranges, and as the town continues forward with its pilot program and its adaptive management program, based on those findings, those ranges will be refined. But what our preferred alternative is showing us is that this compliance approach is within the range of our ultimate TMDL compliance goal, which is 12,154 kilograms per year. The state allows us to move forward with the preferred alternative as long as in this document we also consider what the contingency would be if all of those pilots failed. So what's shown on the right-hand column is an estimate of how much additional wastewater would need to be managed through centralized treatment if we didn't use any of the non-traditional. So this is a very conservative approach, but it gives the bookends to the optimization of the non-traditional all the way to just relying on traditional. The other major component in this chapter is a definition of the 3 planning flows. And I just wanted to pause here and see if anyone had questions on the 2 compliance approaches before we move on. And if not, and I know we've talked about these planning flows before with this committee, but just as a review, planning flow 1 is the focus of our preferred alternative for Great Ponds. It includes the existing permitted flow, a redevelopment allocation for the existing sewer service area, and flow from the T-Ticket-Acapasket sewer service area. In terms of number of connections, the existing permitted flow which includes Falmouth Heights, Woods Hole, and the Mara Vista Peninsula, is approximately 2,400 connections. And with the T-Ticket Ecopesket sewer area, we're looking at adding just shy of 2,000 additional. So for planning flow 1, the overall connections would be about 4,300. As Amy mentioned, when we look at our effluent discharge, it's important to look to the future also. So as part of this evaluation, we considered a planning flow 2, which looks eastward at the other South Coast estuaries at areas that have been targeted for limited sewering as part of those planning efforts by this committee, which include Seco Shores, Antler Shores, Sea Pit, Fisherman's Cove, and Oyster Pond. That brings our planning flow up to 1.55. And then planning flow 3 incorporates our contingency. So that's looking at the additional sewering if none of the non-traditional strategies were used in the plan. Chapter 3 focuses on the non-traditional nitrogen wastewater management alternatives. This was a section that was compiled by ScienceWares, and I know a lot of this data has been presented to the committee already. So we just wanted to highlight that it was a chapter in this report. And chapter 4 is our alternatives analysis. It outlines the proposed collection system, which for Great Pond is the portion of the collection system of the Little Pond service area in Great Pond, as well as the T-Ticket Ecopesket sewer service area. It outlines the strategy for upgrading the wastewater treatment plant to treat planning flow 1, and talks at a conceptual level of what would need to be done at that site to expand even further for future planning flows. And then it goes through an evaluation matrix looking at the different effluent discharge options that we're looking at as part of this project. And the schematic shows the location of TASA and the force main systems that would bring it up to the main plant on Blacksmith Shop Road. One of the areas that we looked at as part of this project is to meet the town's desire to maximize the extent of gravity within the TASA collection system. So there were 4 sewer easements that were identified that'll help optimize the extent of gravity while minimizing the amount of additional lift stations on the T-Ticket Peninsula. And that conceptual layout is shown on the left. It relies on a lift station at the Augusta Parcel, which is an existing municipal parcel, which will both be used to convey raw wastewater from the T-Ticket Peninsula, as well as a booster station to collect all the flow from TASA and pump it up to the wastewater treatment facility. If the town is unsuccessful in getting those sewer easements, that would mean a much larger portion of the system would have to be converted to low pressure, which is what's shown in the right.
I'll just add that, I'm sorry, can you stay on that slide for just a second? So this is something that we will bring to town meeting in the fall, these final easements. And the goal, as Anastasia laid out, is to maximize the number of properties that are served by gravity. This is a goal of the town operationally. The town will be providing wastewater service to all these properties forever once they're sewered. And it is in the town's long-term interest for as much of it to be served by gravity as possible. So that's the goal with these easements. It's about 150 extra parcels that would be served by gravity if we are able to gain these. Again, the project would move forward if we cannot gain these easements. Is just a preferred alternative, as the layout shown on the right is the preferred alternative with those easements. Looks like Doug has a question.
If I could, are you taking questions during the presentation or would you prefer
Yes,
I wait?
please.
I'm curious about the reason why we need to use the low pressure on the area that in yellow. Isn't that the highest ground? Is it a matter of just the distance?
So there's more topography on this T-Ticket Path Peninsula than there is on Mara Vista, for example, and so there is a lot of up and down. The portions that are shown in yellow are the properties where, because of the topography, you cannot get to the lift station by gravity. So part of that may be uphill relative to some of the other parcels, but it's far enough away from the lift station site, and the elevation is such that you can't make it there by gravity. In general, it's sort of the outer edges of the peninsulas, but the whole southern toe of T-Ticket Path can't make it there by gravity.
Would there be a possibility to put another lift station to facilitate it? I'd love to minimize those ejector pump.
Yes, so it is very difficult to do that. We spent an enormous amount of time looking at that. The initial layout that the town evaluated here was something like 5 lift stations on this peninsula. But this is a residential neighborhood with very few undeveloped lots, and those that are undeveloped are bracketed. Those that are undeveloped and useful because of their elevation and their location are bracketed on either side by residential homes and very valuable property. And we just did not find feasible lift station sites on this peninsula. I did make actually quite a bit of effort to site a lift station on the Village Common Drive peninsula, or Village Common Drive road, the commercial road there, and had quite a challenge there as well. So lift station siting is no easy matter, and we have done the best we could with lift station siting here, and we're accomplishing more of what we need to accomplish with, or what we want to accomplish with the easements.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, Ken, Steve.
Either one. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, the question really is cost differential of these two options.
Well,
Do we have an estimate of that?
to be fair, the issue isn't entirely cost. In fact, it isn't principally cost. It's a lifetime of management of the two alternatives. A pipe you put in the ground and don't have to deal with for the next 60 years versus installations that you have to deal with individual homeowners.
Ultimately, that's cost, right? Ultimately, they have to replace their pumps, or they have to do something that works out to be a cost.
Well, the town replaces their pumps. We've committed to that. So there's a lot of town commitments involved in these low pressures that Amy would like to minimize.
Okay, I'm just trying to get educated on this. That's my.
Yeah, it's a tough argument in a way, because there will be a large number of grinder pumps within this service area, no matter what we do. That's just the nature of sewering in this low, mostly low elevation south coast. So we're not saying we're not trying to do away with them entirely. We are just trying to minimize them where we can. And I don't have a final cost estimate for the cost comparison for this option here. We have compared those in the past, and we can pull that out again, but we have not developed something specifically for this trade-off here.
Steve.
Yeah. So first off, I'll just try to answer Ken's question for him. Low pressure sewers are typically a lower initial cost than a gravity system, typical. However, the life cycle cost for the low pressure system will exceed over a 25 or 30-year period the cost of the gravity sewer. And the gravity sewer, once it goes in, should be good 50, 100, 150 years, unless we have earthquakes, it's not going anyplace. So that's back to when Amy says it's better to have gravity in the long term. Second thing I'd like to comment on, and this is picking up on what Doug Brown asked about the lift station issue here. I'd like to suggest, Amy, that perhaps we should be looking at the next group of peninsulas. And if there is a lot or a parcel that looks like it would be in a good location for a pump station when we finally get there, maybe be working on that over the next several years to acquire a couple of parcels specifically for that. Because I think we found that on Mara Vista that was kind of boxed out once we got there. So.
Let me give you a call later.
Lift stations, so that is a good point. We have looked preliminarily at the next peninsula at Acapesket, but you're right, we should be moving on that as soon as possible. I have not looked for a long time in the other areas that we're moving on to down the road, the Seacoast Shores, for example, and you're right, the sooner we can plan ahead, the better. It's just very difficult to site these things in a residential neighborhood, as you know. So
I agree. Yep.
Keep going.
Any other questions on the collection system? And if not, we'll move on to, so the majority of this chapter actually focuses on the effluent discharge evaluation, which looks at 3 land-based sites, maximizing the use of open sand beds 14 and 15, and developing new sites either at the Augusta Parcel or at the, Augusta Parcel down here, or the Allen Parcel to the east, as well as 2 ocean outfall options. We did present to this committee on this evaluation within the past couple of months. So for this presentation, we just wanted to give a very high-level summary of the evaluation. But the evaluation was done through a matrix that looked at a number of different parameters, focusing on environmental sensitivities, as well as public acceptance and location of the different parcels. For the first site, Allen Parcel, we listed advantages and disadvantages of each. This is a very large parcel, and it has a significant amount of capacity, both for planning flow 1 and through planning flow 3. One of the major disadvantages is, like many of the land-based parcels in the town, it is in a coastal watershed, and you would be returning nitrogen load and phosphorus load, in this case to the Great Pond and the Green Pond watersheds. And the chapter does go into detail of the different evaluations that were done for nitrogen recycling, as well as phosphorus sequestration. And one key takeaway from this slide is the cost, which is approximately 30 million in today's dollars to develop the site for planning flow 1, with additional costs as you continue to develop the site for additional planning flows.
I think those were $2026.
I believe so, yes. So inflated to the midpoint of construction. Augusta Parcel is another town-owned municipal parcel, again, with a significant amount of capacity, likely through planning flow 3, but it has a number of the same disadvantages of Allen Parcel, specifically that it is in the Great Pond watershed and would return load to that watershed. However, it is not upgradient of any freshwater system, so you don't have a potential issue with phosphorus. Can I see your hand is up?
Yeah, so I remember this being presented, and a thought occurred to me, not that we will end up doing this, but this might be a situation where if you did have disposal and then a plume coming from that you could then enhance the treatment with a reactive barrier to intercept that specific plume down gradient. Is that something that's anyone's thinking about?
There is the potential to pair those. At this point, you're taking it down to a very low level of nitrogen when you're returning it, a very small portion of which is nitrate, which is the active component that you're targeting. So it may be a limited return, but there is the potential to potentially have a PRB downstream that could polish some
So
of
in
the effluent
yeah, so in
nitrogen.
terms of the end load, calculated end load, do you treat it as total? And
Yes, yeah,
and-
that's the way the state looks at it, and that's the way that we
right,
need to look
and
at it
and
too.
then I just wonder if in transit through the aquifer, if any of that dissolved organic nitrogen gets, you know, mineralized and converted to nitrate, maybe there is some further processing that occurs naturally in transit.
As you saw in the preferred alternatives slide, there is a concept that there would be a PRB constructed as part of the preferred alternative for Great Pond, though not necessarily to intercept this plume. Ironically, this plume was, of course, a lower concentration than what would be coming from anywhere else up gradient in the watershed. So you might actually get a bigger bang for the buck by putting in your PRB to intercept nitrate coming from septic systems up gradient within the watershed. The PRB is not as you all are well aware, that is not a part of our design for, at this point. That is just a part of the concept of the preferred alternative. But that is something that to be thought about in the future as part of the PRB site evaluation is, focusing on the higher concentration nitrogen coming down from the watershed.
The last thing that I wanted to point out on this slide was the cost, which is a similar order of magnitude to Allen Parcel. There's less clearing anticipated on this parcel and slightly better soils. So slightly less, but in the same order of magnitude. Steve, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think Ken makes a valid sort of comment about PRBs. The short answer, Ken, is the working group did not look at PRBs. The working group did get to the understanding that using the Augusta parcel, we would not knock enough nitrogen down to meet the goals for Great Pond, and that something further would have to be done if we stayed with the Augusta parcel. And I think if we circle back to this parcel and have to find something more than what we're already thinking about for 27.4 million, I think that exercise would look at all sorts of options, whether it's increasing the sewer surface area, adding PRBs or whatever. But we got to a certain point and said, this is not really taking us where we think we need to go long term. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Well, just as a point of reference, what's the background level of nitrogen in the groundwater in the areas where this plume would be released? Just for a point of comparison.
Good question.
I don't have data on that particular area, but I can say that our upgradient monitoring wells in other places for our 2 wastewater plants vary from 0.5 to 3 milligrams per liter background. There's a lot of septic nitrate in the groundwater as it is.
And I'm thinking what you would be releasing would be about 0.3. Is that the goal?
No,
It would be 3 milligrams per liter before it's diluted in the groundwater.
3.0.
3.0, right?
Oh, it'd be 3 instead of 0.3? So-
The treatment plant treats down to 3.
Oh,
Jason?
okay, I was off there. I thought it was all the way to 0.3.
Yeah.
Nothing gets you there.
I'll
Milligrams
loosen
per
the
liter.
Halo a little bit.
Rainwater isn't there.
Just make sure we're talking about the same units. It's 3 milligrams per liter of total nitrogen
Yeah.
is our permit target.
Yeah, okay. For some reason, I was off a notch.
Tom, the point is that that input into Great Pond comes right where the pond is most impacted at its head.
Yes.
And so that's what's sort of given us pause.
I mean, the one other thing to think about is it's not just concentration. You're putting a lot of flow there, so you're going to have flow times concentration is low.
Yep.
And that, even though the concentration might be comparatively low, it's still a significant loading, right? Which is, again, it's possible argument for a PRB if you ended up with this, which it sounds like you're not going to.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, which is definitely a consideration because for planning flow 1, you're taking load outside of Great Pond and putting it back in Great Pond. But as you look at planning flows 2 and 3, you're starting to take load from other watersheds and then moving that effluent to Great Pond at a much lower concentration, but you are still transferring load if you were to optimize the use of this site.
Any other questions? We can go ahead.
Steve, you still have your hand up, or is that from before?
No, do I have to click on this thing for it to go down? I'm
Okay.
sorry about that. That was the first time I used that button. Never used it before. Sorry. I usually just go like this.
That works too. So the last land-based site we looked at was optimizing the use of open sand beds 14 and 15. This is a parcel that's already municipally owned. It's already purchased and zoned for wastewater, and you can get there by gravity from the existing wastewater treatment plant. So while there is some clearing to expand those beds, it'd be less land disturbance than the other sites. And it's anticipated that there's approximately 500,000 gallons per day of additional capacity at that site, which is equivalent to our planning flow 1. And then the cons is it is upgradient of freshwater systems. As we start increasing this flow, the modeling has shown that some nitrogen is anticipated to go directly to Herringbrook, and there is opposition to transferring load to Buzzards Bay.
I see a hand for Steve Layton. Is that a question?
Yes, Steve?
If I may, if you go back to that previous slide, you don't actually have to go back to it, but if you remember it, do you give credit? I know the town already owns those 2 parcels, but they could in principle be used for something else. Do you give credit for that to the outfall, or do you cost that to these? It seemed to me you should do one or the other.
So the evaluation at this point assumes that they would remain municipal parcels. It doesn't assume their sale or a different use for those parcels if you go to ocean outfall. But that is a
If you
great
don't
point.
use them, the town would not have to buy something else to do something else. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I just wanted to get the idea out there.
Oh, I didn't know whether you guys got a follow-up from my chart or how that works.
I'm raising my hand, Anastasia.
Yes.
And this is a little bit of a question for Eric. If we're going to use a similar slides in front of the selectmen, do we really want to say a con is that Buzzards Bay Coalition opposes this?
Nope. We'll edit it before it goes any beyond this group here. But this was sort of, you're right, this was kind of the in-house conversation, but it isn't it isn't the final product.
Yeah, I mean, the Buzzard Bay Coalition, anybody can oppose anything. You know,
Right.
So.
Yeah, we were just listing issues that we knew would come up, and that was one of them. But by the end, they may not oppose it. Who knows? You know?
I got a piece of mail from them today that tells me that I should vote for all of the wastewater upgrades in town.
Sometimes there are friends.
Yeah, I was surprised, pleasantly surprised.
Might be a reaction to the negative composting toilet
Yeah, could be.
arguments.
No bad idea ever goes away.
Eric and I were talking about it last night. It is discouraging. You're referring, Ken, that there have been several letters to the editor about boosting composting toilets. And it is discouraging because the committee did do an enormous amount of work to put together a program to offer those, and there were very few takers, and of those that did install them, several even uninstalled them. It is an option, and people, there's going to be plenty of the town that's going to be remaining on septic systems, no matter.
You don't have to convince me, Amy.
Right.
I thought they were extremely forceful letters, let's put it politely that way, and they ought to be answered. And I was wondering, Eric, you're very good at writing those sorts of things.
Well, the election's tomorrow, so it's too late for my good letters. But we have answered it over the course of time. But you're right, nobody pays attention till the week before the election to anything. So, but like I say, we have, this committee did the definitive study of eco toilets. We offered incentives.
I don't doubt that.
Notified the whole world, and the answer is pretty clear, but not to the people who think eco toilets are great.
All right. It's also a no-brainer that you've already got 20,000 regular toilets and no one's taken them out to put, if you were building new maybe. But.
Well, as Amy pointed out, 9 people took them out and 2 people put them back.
So yeah, Ken, I realized I didn't need to lecture you about composting toilets. I was trying to do what you were saying, which is I'm aware that this is going to be on TV at some point. And for anybody out there listening, that there are still going to be plenty of properties in Falmouth that are not sewered. So those who are interested in using composting toilets to improve water quality should advocate their installation in the large number of inland or upgradient parcels that are not going to be sewered in the next 50 years or out that we can ever envision at this point. Anyway, I'll hush up about composting toilets right now.
Right. Keep going.
And the last thing I wanted to note on this slide, so the site only has anticipated capacity for planning flow 1, but because you don't need to develop a force main system to pump to a remote part of town, it is a much more cost-effective option at $1.4 million. And the last option that we evaluated as part of this project was a planning level look at 2 outfall options, one in Buzzards Bay and one in Vineyard Sounds. The major advantage of this option is that you would bypass that nitrogen load that we've been talking about coming back to a coastal estuary completely through an outfall. And of course, there is a cost associated with the amount of capacity that you have in the ocean outfall, but you have much more flexibility in that capacity as opposed to the land-based sites that we've been looking at. The major cons are it's anticipated to be a very lengthy permitting process. And at this planning level view, there's a lot of unknowns of what the outfall would look like. And the town has started evaluating to answer some of these questions of what would be the preferred location for the outfall, what would be the ideal length, and looking at soil conditions in order to be able to develop a cost estimate. But from this very big planning level view, we consider it an unknown cost because there are so many unknowns at this point. So the recommendation that was voted on as part of this committee and to the select board and also accepted there was to designate existing open sand beds 14 and 15 as the preferred planning CASA and ESRA, contingent on an MEP report that's currently ongoing that's evaluating the capacity of Herring Brook or how nitrogen affects Herring Brook. And then also to move forward with an evaluation looking in closer detail at ocean outfall options in Buzzards Bay and Vineyard Sound, along with continuing the evaluation for land-based options at Allen and Augusta Parcels to define the preferred alternative for future flows. Chapter 5 outlines this recommended approach, as well as the preferred compliance approach, which includes the optimization of the demonstration project, the TASA collection system, and an upgrade at the facility to treat planning flow 1. It also outlines the contingency approach, which outlines the future assuring that would be needed if the pilots failed in a no-action alternative, as well as it describes the adaptive management and monitoring program that would be implemented to assess progress towards the preferred compliance approach. And Chapter 5 also includes an implementation schedule and includes the improvements at the treatment facility, which are currently under design and are scheduled to be constructed in 2023 and 2024. It targets a vote at town meeting to establish betterment percentages in 2022 and an appropriation for design of the TASA collection system and recharge facilities in 2023, followed by a construction appropriation for the first phase in 2024, and then an approximate construction period for TASA, which likely may be broken up into multiple phases. Chapter 6 through 8 touch on climate change and the greenhouse gas valuation for the preferred alternative, NEPA draft 61 findings and mitigation, and the consistency with the Cape Cod Commission section 208 plan. And the very last chapter of the plan provides an outline for the compliance approach of the remainder of the South Coast estuaries and West Falmouth Harbor, as well as a proposed schedule for the remainder of this planning effort. So the goal is to focus in the short term on continuing the ocean outfall evaluation so that the town can make the decision on whether an ocean outfall or a land-based option is the appropriate solution for future planning flows. After that decision is made, the town will move forward with the Green and Great Pond TWMP, and then followed by the Wacoit Bay TWMP. So at this meeting, we've provided an overview. We'll give everybody a chance to review the report. We have a meeting next Monday to discuss any comments from the committee on that report, followed by a meeting in June 6th to vote on the draft TWMP. And then, as I noted in the beginning of the presentation, we're targeting June for the select board review and vote, and July for the submission of the draft TWMP to NEPA and DEP. So this was meant to be a very broad overview of what is in the document that you received last week. And I know we've been addressing questions along the way, but wanted to stop and see if there were any questions on the initial summary. Doug, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I've been thinking lately about asking the committee to revise its plan and incorporate an extension of the sewer main up Route 28 through East Falmouth Business Zone, potentially as far as Central Ave, and maybe putting that on a fast timeline. I know there's probably no opportunity to include it in this next sewering phase because the capacity at sand beds 14 and 15 are only going to handle what we already have planned. But I would like the committee to consider adjusting our plans going forward to include that area, in addition to going up Shorewood and Acapesket to run that sewer line up to the corner of Central Ave. That would enable us to consider rezoning redevelopment district in East Falmouth and putting some larger scale housing in some of those business owned areas. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not sure if this is the right time for it, but I just want to get it on your radar. I'm going to be at the planning board on the 24th to present the idea to the planning board and see if we get their endorsement.
Just to be clear, is this an idea of yours or is this an idea of the Board of Selectmen?
So far, it's my own idea, and I thought I'd bring it to the planning board and to your committee first to see what the feedback was before suggesting it to my board, because I thought you guys should look at it first and see if it makes any sense.
It does fly in the face of what your board has told us to do for the last 10 years.
I agree. I understand that. And it's just that this housing crisis has got me trying to think of some ways to get out of this crisis that we're in. And it seems to be getting a bigger problem faster than what our planning can really accommodate. So, I mean, it's just an idea I'm throwing out there to see if there's any possibility of adjusting our plans. And so I thought I'd start here.
Why are you thinking the corner of Central Ave and 28 is the premier place for development of affordable housing? Or any
Just pick a place to stop. It doesn't really have to be there. It could be at the end of Deborah Ann Lane. I just wanted to get at least past the fire station to give that stretch of land an opportunity to have more density, because there are some properties there that are business owned that look like they're ripe for redevelopment. And also there's a vacant lot on the corner by the Rockland Trust. So, and I think East Falmouth could be, benefit from the redevelopment as well as the housing. So.
Actually, we gave East Falmouth the chance to have Mr. Codd zoning put into place, and Mr. Netto, speaking on behalf of East Falmouth, persuaded town meeting not to do that.
Well, that was just one person's thoughts, and town meeting, I think, was just trying to get the other part passed. I think the town meeting vote showed that how important it was to do it downtown first. And I don't see Joe Netto at the East Falmouth Village Association board meetings, so I'm not sure. He was speaking for the whole village.
Well, he got more votes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions from anybody?
One procedural question, Eric. It's fairly straightforward. If you want to get to the select board in June, do you think that we need a half hour of their time or more?
That's their call. I would suspect, based on the time that this presentation took, we might need more, but that we can ask for more.
What does Doug think? He's the guy.
I guess I don't know what their agenda is coming up and what they have for meeting things, but it might be good to try to get a slot reserved.
Sure.
Would you just suggest what time you think you need, and then we'll fill it in?
No, but your meeting schedule in June?
I don't, but I can look it up real quick.
Okay. Well, find us at least half an hour one of your 2 days.
Okay.
I had a different question, if Eric, if I may.
Sure.
This is intriguing with the biogas anaerobic, energy capture. Because a few years ago we made some measurements on the SBRs, and there's a ton of stuff that comes off those, N2O and methane, at the West Falmouth plant. Is that something that's seriously been? I mean, I know it's in here, but is it something that's seriously been thought about?
Amy, Anastasia?
We have looked at this in concept a number of times in the past, and what we have concluded each time is that at this scale, it is not affordable to do that, or it's not beneficial to do that. MWRA does that kind of thing, and it has worked very well for them. Steve Rafferty probably knows
I guess
something about that.
Amy, I guess I'm wondering if there's, and they probably don't exist yet, but, you know, carbon credits that we could get for doing it that would provide a subsidy.
I'm not aware of carbon credits available in Massachusetts. Are you?
They used to have a market for solar renewable energy credits.
Right.
Oh yeah, I know about that. But I
Yeah,
don't know
but
about-
I don't think it's transferred to other forms of renewable energy.
Right,
And
yeah,
at least
you-
not at this point to offset the large capital costs to put in the infrastructure for biogas.
Yeah, it's an appealing concept, but it really is only efficient to do at a large scale, and it costs a lot of money to capture and make use of that.
Steve,
I'll just jump in here. Ken, if you want to get a better understanding of what this may or may not really entail, Fairhaven's wastewater plant, which their flow, I think, is in the 2+ mg range right now. They, a number of years ago, got ERA money or whatever and went down this path. It's been a real learning curve for them. It's a tricky piece, an expensive piece, as Amy says. They tried to make it work by setting it up to take the grease from all the restaurants, and that never worked out. So they've got stuck with this, and they're having to run it. I think it's a long reach right now for what we have. We just don't have enough biomass.
That's why I asked. I wanted to know if it was serious or we just put it in there for frosting.
I'll leave this for somebody else to answer, like Anastasia, but I do believe the state's got some in-place regulations about managing residuals and other things that they've been looking for opportunities to do this, you know. Falmouth was crazy that we could decide to become a regional sludge processor and take all the sludges from all the other communities on the Cape and make biogas, but I don't think that's what we want to do today.
No.
I don't think I want to take that to town meeting.
Yeah. Actually, there's some sludge I'd like to take out of town meeting, but
Keep in mind, we're on TV here.
that was a polite term. Residuals, I like the term residuals better. This is a small part of the puzzle here, but Great Pond is a big part of our puzzle. And I've brought this up a couple of times, and Chris Neal has recently indicated that perhaps the nitrogen mass present in Coonamessett River is perhaps quite a bit larger than what's been used so far in the modeling. And I didn't know, Anastasia, do you know how those numbers work out, or have they ever been updated based on new data?
They have not. So the numbers that we're working with are from the original MEP analyses.
Right. And I think Chris gave us a report about a month ago, and I can't remember his numbers off the top of my head, but I'd really, I have no idea what it would cost to maybe perhaps try to get a better handle on presently and projected what's going on in the Coonamessett River versus the groundwater inputs to Great Bay.
Well, it would probably move the goalposts in a direction we don't like.
Well, that's exactly my concern. I'm quite, I'm looking way down the road, but we're headed this way with Little Pond, right? We really want to find out when we turn these rocks over what's going to be under there. And I would be concerned that we're taking on this really, really big project, and 10 years from now, it turns out we should have just put a giant detention pond at the mouth of the Coonamessett River. full of floating wood chips or something. I don't know. But I just would be more comfortable if I had more faith in the numbers that have been used in the present models.
Amy.
I know what you're referring to, Tom. Chris Neal's presentation did indicate that there's more nitrogen load coming from the Coonamessett River than the MEP reports had estimated earlier on. The thing is that there is more room there will be more additional nitrogen removal will need to be implemented, whether in the future, whether we do this sewer project or not.
Right.
If we don't do this sewer project, there's a lot more that needs to be done. So to me, that question, the Coonamessett River input just shows that there's still a lot of work to do. It doesn't make it any less important for us to do this project. That's
right. No, I think it's very important for us to do this project, but so often we do things, and not peculiar to us, other places too. We do things and people say, "Oh, we fixed it,"
Right.
And I just want to leave the door open that fixing may not occur quite as rapidly as some people anticipate.
Hi, Steve.
I'll be quiet for a while.
Steve.
Well, I think Tom's making a little bit of I guess, the way this report's coming together, is there space someplace in the way the report's put together currently to be able to say, this is the number that we got from SMAS a number of years ago. This is what we are working on. However, we would like to note that there's been this piece of science happening in the Coonamessett River, and that the initial data on that would indicate that the SMAS number may need to be revised or reconsidered, and we will continue to work with the Coonamessett River folks to monitor what's happening. I think I'm trying to wordsmith this, but if there's no place that it fits in without somebody going, what, maybe we don't do anything. But
yeah, so it fits in with the adaptive management approach.
Yes.
Because that's the idea, is that you're constantly monitoring the system, seeing how it reacts, and adjusting your plan, right? We're not just working towards a static number. And exactly like Tom said, we do A, B, and C, we're done. The whole purpose of that monitoring program is to be able to adjust the program. So if there's a desire, we can add a little verbiage in that section to address a specific area that the town is studying at this point.
I guess before you go rewriting anything, John and Eric, maybe, what's your viewpoint on this?
I personally think you just fall back on adaptive management. You don't spend a lot of time talking about exceptions that you're not sure of at this point. You say we're taking a definitive step in the right direction at the moment, and after monitoring it for a number of years, we find out it wasn't enough. We'll figure out what we need to do then.
They've got 80 MEP reports, all of which are getting pretty old. And every one of them is going to have the same question if you wanted to ask it. If they want to open up that box, let them try. But I'm inclined not to think we should. Doug.
They're still sampling every year, so if you ever really wanted to raise the question, I'm sure they could whip up a new contract for Brian House to give us a new status update. But I agree with Eric. I don't think you want to go there. Just continue to do the best we can.
Yeah, we are paying Brian to annually give us current numbers on all of his Sentinel stations. He may confirm what Tom's guessing, but let's not ask the question.
For what it's worth, I just put together the latest of the numbers on the groundwater sampling wells around Little Pond, and it looks like an unambiguous decline in nitrogen content in the groundwater. It's really clear.
That's great.
So
These are from your land-based
right. Right.
Okay, good.
So they have one advantage over the USGS work, which is they sample the west shore as well as the eastern shore. And anyway, it's very clear, and hopefully in the near future, if you give me a few minutes, I'll go over it all with you.
Sure. Doug, is that a hand?
Doug has one up.
Yes.
I didn't realize I had my hand up, but I do have a comment for you. I believe, so we regularly had scheduled June 6th and June 20th, but now June 20th has been declared Juneteenth as a holiday in Falmouth. So that meeting's going to be rescheduled, and I think we're going to take the 13th and probably the 27th now. So the Affordable Housing Committee is going to come on the 13th, but you could still probably fit on that agenda if you would like to. Or the 27th, if that's better.
Okay. Well, whichever one works better for you is fine with us.
I'll have to
Am I
check.
right? Anything, Anastasia, are you available both those days?
Let me check quickly. Yeah, either day would work for me.
Okay, well, whatever Doug can sign us up for, either one.
I'll check with the
We'll
staff.
be ready. We will have acted on this by the 6th, so we're all right.
I'll get back to you on tomorrow with definite options.
Great,
Thank you.
Thank you.
great, thanks. Okay, the process for us is that the text goes to all the members and comments or recommendations for modifications go to Kristen. Describe how this is going to go. Kristen.
So for those of you who were on the committee for the CWMP, basically I send you a Word document. Use track changes, use the comment button to add stuff in the electronic version, send it back to me. If it goes around to all the members, that violates open meeting law. That's why we can't do something like Google Drive or Google Document for that. So what happens is I will take everybody's comments and edits and I will merge it into one document, and then we'll go through kind of line by line as we hit the edits as we go, so that they can be discussed with everybody together in a public forum. So get your comments to me. I did send that last week. If you have issues and need help figuring out how to do that, feel free, give me a call. I will help you. I'm Eric's tech support all the time, so I can help everybody.
If she can help me, she can help anyone.
So.
But there is a time frame involved here because we're reconvening in a week, which means we'd really like to have these comments into her.
By either next Thursday or Friday, because I'm not going to send the comments around before the meeting. That'll be viewed in person or virtually, whatever the next meeting is.
Mm-hmm.
Many people have germs. So yeah, by the end of next week would be preferable. So
By the end of next week, the next meeting is the
next meeting is the
23rd.
Yep.
Okay, so we're talking about the end of this
20th.
week. The end of this week.
So I will not be here
Yes.
on the 23rd. I think I told you guys that. I can't do
Yes.
the 23rd.
Okay.
But you can still send me your comments and I will put them up there.
Yeah.
People can bash them without you being there to defend them.
Will do.
If we do a Zoom again, would you be available or are you gone?
I'm visiting family.
Fair enough.
I just
Okay.
don't think I can.
Let it go. Okay. So yeah, comments in by Steve.
If we have no comments, we should still reply back. We have no comments, so you're not chasing us, correct?
Yes, please.
Yes. I do believe I've read this once already.
Yes, I found your comments.
I will skim through it again, but
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
Yeah, and if you're meeting on the 23rd, I am in California.
Okay, well, okay, so that's 2 down. How's everybody else for the 23rd?
And I guess I would say if it's a Zoom meeting, you know, I could probably find a way to hook up and jump in if you need to make quorum.
I look good for the afternoon.
Okay, John? You're muted. You're still muted.
I think I'm okay, Eric, on the 23rd.
Okay, and we have Matt, who's,
Matt left and Jordan, I can ping them.
okay, check with them to make sure this 23rd is gonna work.
Yep.
Did you say you can only do the afternoon on the 23rd?
The only thing I have, and it's pretty flexible, is I have more physical therapy scheduled for some time that day, but I don't have a time slot. So morning would work,
Okay.
as far as I know. And I would just tell them to work around that.
Thank you.
Right? I'm the customer. Let me tell them what to do.
Yeah, that seems fair. All right, well, presuming that Matt can come and she can come, we'll have a quorum and we'll have the comments from the 2 who might not be there. And
I
we'll
think it
roll
could go.
along. The
Yeah.
final vote wouldn't be until the first Monday in June anyway. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So did you decided that the comments would be due by this Friday, the 20th,
Yes.
to
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
That's what I wrote down.
thank you.
Okay. Any other reports of members and staff? No, not too much. I am told the mailing in our support will be received in everybody's mailbox today. Certainly hope so. After today, it doesn't do much good, but
No.
this is compliments of our friends at the coalition. Okay, we
It's
have
terrific.
Doug, yeah.
I told my friend Bernie from the Village Association that I would share his concerns with the committee, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So he has been noticing, he lives right on the mill pond there near the area where the channel that comes from the new detention pond from the bog.
Mhm.
And he's very concerned that the channel that cuts through there has been plugged with debris and leaves and stuff for years. And he mentioned how George Souza used to clean it and that, no one's cleaned it in many years and it's fallen into where hardly any water can pass through it. And he's very concerned that the lack of water coming into the pond is preventing any flushing at the other end. Because if you can't get water in, you can't get it out. And he's looking to the Water Quality Management Committee or to the experts involved to look at whether or not that's something that can be fixed, if that channel could be cleared.
Kristen, you're the last one out there.
Yep.
So what I had said when Mary Ellen had asked was that when we did the permit, we had the permit for the agricultural exemption up in the bogs. So doing the channel didn't fit in with that as far as clearing. We did clear right at the culvert where that comes in. George Sousa used to do that, and that's MES. It's worth a conversation to talk to sit down with Concom and MES to see if that's something they can take on or what used to be done and how we move forward with that, what steps we need to go through to legally do it. So that is a conversation that could be started, but it was never in the conversations with that permit because it did not fall in with any of the agricultural needs for the project as we defined it to get that exemption.
Is that something you suggest I should go and look into myself?
Are we talking about just
Something I can support as well.
Are we talking about just clearing accumulated debris out of a channel?
Yes.
And
So
then
it's
why does-
technically considered wetland because it's plant matter in the state pond, because it's a great pond. So you get into very gray areas.
I'm guessing that they might approve it, but I just wanted to check on for best steps forward, or if it was something that was going to be done anyway.
It's not immediately in our plans.
You know, this committee ends up being the entity that goes to Concom for this kind of project, but our last submission only dealt with the agricultural piece and not with this area, which is not part of the agricultural piece. So I'm not sure, would we have to amend that, or put a new one in, or would DES put one in, or who would have to ask?
I think it's worth a conversation. Perhaps Doug and I go and we talk to Jen Lincoln and talk to her and find out from her, just a sit down conversation and what her recommendation might be.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So-
Bernie also asked me to note that it seems like a really big increase in fish activity in the pond this year. He was out fishing just this week, and he caught 6 pickerel and a couple of trout, which he hadn't been doing before. So I don't know. Sounds like a good sign.
You told him it was due to our activities, I hope.
I think he was telling me, but he wants more.
Good, okay.
Of course. We also got a letter from the Wacoit folks concerned about a culvert collapsing and needing rebuilding, you remember? Which
Yes.
was sent around to all the members today. It's not really our jurisdiction to deal with collapsed culverts. That's DPW.
No.
But to the extent they would rebuild it in a way that was helpful or harmful to the bay, we do pay attention. But like I say, we don't do culverts.
There's a few of those.
DPW highway.
Yep. Okay. All right. Any other reports of members and staff? How about the minutes of the prior meeting? Everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes of the prior meeting? Any additions or corrections?
There's 2 typos in there, but I'm gonna let Tom identify them.
Okay.
Excellent.
Tom, where are you? Tom?
Second page, second line, last word should be the,
Instead
I
of
was gonna put A, but the is fine.
okay? And then at the bottom of item 2, the next to last sentence, revise its regulations on irrigation instead of irrigation.
Yeah, no, I agree. That was
Anything else?
on irrigation, regulations on irrigation wells, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we got 2.
And I have one little typo. Don Anderson's talk, first letter in the 4th line of the 2nd paragraph, Daisy siphonia should be capitalized.
Yep.
And keep on keeping on.
Okay.
All
I'm
right.
done.
I think Tom just made a motion to adopt the minutes as amended.
And can I combine that with a motion for adjournment?
Sure.
Multitask?
Wait a minute, don't we have to do a roll call on the adjournment?
Yeah, I think you do.
All right, so let's do the voice vote on the minutes. Okay, as amended, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Got it. Hands, minute, good. Okay, now,
Now I'll motion to adjourn.
Second,
moved and seconded by somebody,
Rafferty,
everybody.
everybody.
All
Okay,
right.
moved
I'm
and
in
seconded to
favor.
adjourn. All in favor, put your hand up. Eric is in favor, Steve's in favor, John Waterby's in favor, Tom Duncan's in favor, Ken Forman's in favor. The others are missing in action, but we have a quorum and they're all in favor. So we are adjourned.
You know,
Good luck tomorrow.